And ladies, I want to talk to you more about the Empowered Woman Experience, the book that comes with that, why food and fat and fitness are female issues, because you've been led to believe a lot of things that simply aren't true and that can make you miserable. I wrote my book, The Anti-Diet Approach to Weight Loss and Weight Control, because clearly the research is starting to show how the North American diet mentality, the eat this, not that idea, and fear of food behind it is distorting health and wellness and actually making people depressed, anxious, stressed. And since 80% of people who resort to dieting because of body dissatisfaction are women, then this level of depression and stress affects women more so than men. So this is about the anti-diet approach to weight loss and weight control. You can see my book on it. I suggest you read my book on it. But basically, the North American diet approach to eat this, not that, and diets that encourages you to consciously restrict your diet intake and walk around, being calorie conscious all day long, walking around with FitPal in your smartphone. Not only are these been proven and shown time and time again to be ineffective in terms of the outcome of weight control long term, but they've also been psychologically damaging and counterproductive, and no one's really looking at those consequences, especially in the fitness industry that tries to promote, shame on you, you don't want it bad enough if you can't lose weight. So this whole idea of being calorie conscious, this whole idea of the North American diet mentality of eat this, not that, and putting foods into evil versus good categories are promoting psychological distress, unhealthy eating behaviors, including eating disorders. The current one that's gaining a lot of pace now is binge eating disorder among dieters, mostly female. So and anxiety and depression, all coming from a diet attempt or the notion that diet is part of the female experience. So I wrote the book, The Anti-Diet Approach to Weight Loss and Weight Control, because clearly research is starting to show that a non-diet, non-restrictive, anti-diet approach shifts the focus away from outcomes of dieting, or weight outcomes as we say, and focuses more on the improvement of real and true health outcomes. Because a lot of you say you want to feel healthier, but truly you're really dieting because you want to look better, and you get caught in that lie that you tell yourself that happiness comes with leanness, and it's just the things are completely unrelated. So we look at the anti-diet approach in terms of including psychological well-being, not weight loss at all costs, which the North American diet mentality always underlines, whether it states so consciously or not. So an anti-diet approach promotes learning how to eat based on learning and abiding in things I talk about, internal cues and biofeedback, things like learning to appreciate the difference between hunger and appetite, between cravings, understanding satiety in the brain. I also wrote a book on this called Beyond Metabolism, Understanding Your Modern Diet Dilemma, which includes understanding how the appetite control centers work in the brain. So moving away from the diet approach of counting calories and being calorie conscious, and so food aware but food afraid at the same time. So you learn how to take count of the internal cues of your body, and you make behavioral choices, food choices based on that. What I say is you make choices you can live with in the moment when considering long-term consequences, because you have to live your life as well. And if a diet defines your life, then you don't have much of a life. So we want to continue a non-diet approach. The diet approach, the North American diet approach that teaches you to fear food, is completely unnatural to all living creatures. No other creature or mammal on the planet fears food. That is an attachment, what we call an emotional attachment, and it's mostly underlined in the North American eat this, not that diet approach to fear food lest you get fat. So all becoming about outcomes, which never used to be part of the human experience. And now lots of studies are being implemented to show that these anti-diet interventions, or these non-restrictive diet interventions, are getting away from the diet mentality. Studies are looking into that now. You can go on something like PubMed, and see studies from all kinds of different periodicals that reflect the failure of the North American, what I call the North American diet mentality. And the reviews of these approaches, as you'll see if you go and look at the real research, examining the physical and the psychological effects of an anti-diet approach, an anti-restrictive approach, these conclusions the research is showing now and overall the studies are showing positive effects resulting from anti-dieting approaches, demonstrating improvements not just in eating habits, but in lifestyle habits, not being afraid to go live your life because there might be food present, and even an improved body image perception. When you let go of that diet mentality, lots of good things happen psychologically in terms of well-being. But under the influence of the North American diet mentality, which is measured by dietary restraint, restrictive dieting, good food versus bad food, physical activity, not just for its own sake, but calorie burning, and body satisfaction and a drive for thinness, what I call life inside the thin cage. The overall conclusion is that it's this North American diet mindset that leads to depression, leads to feelings of inadequacy, leads to ineffectiveness in terms of how you function overall, leads to anxiety, lower self-esteem, negative life effect, which means you don't feel good about yourself or your life, and less quality of life because your life becomes revolved around thoughts of food and food restriction, and that also restricts how you live your life socially. But participants in non-diet approaches in various studies are showing across the board now increased and improved psychological health and well-being in all of the indices mentioned above. Less depression, less anxiety, less stress, less body image consciousness, more body acceptance, more well-being. So several improvements, and they did not just these studies looking at an anti-diet, anti-restrictive approach short-term, like most diet studies do, but long-term. And the follow-up periods for is up to 2 years long. Participants in these studies were still 92% committed to a non-diet approach, which means it's a sustainable lifestyle, which is important, which isn't very seldom discussed in a North American diet mentality. In addition, behavior modifications that are positive and promote health and well-being, improvements in healthy eating behaviors rather than restrictive ones, maintaining a non-diet approach, increased self-esteem, and decreased body image dissatisfaction. So more body image acceptance are sustained long-term as well by approaching food with an anti-diet approach or an anti-restriction, anti-North American diet mentality approach. So right now the research is showing that an anti-diet approach that encourages you to eat intuitively, teaches you how to eat intuitively, helps you abandon unhealthy weight control behaviors. Listen to that phrase, abandon unhealthy weight control behaviors, something very essential to the female experience. When you do so, you improve not only your sense of health and well-being, your metabolic fitness, which is what all this should be about, your emotional fitness in terms of body satisfaction and self-acceptance and self-nurturing through food rather than self-denial through denial of food. And then you improve your levels of perceived psychological well-being. You feel better about yourself and your life. All of this by getting rid of the North American diet mentality, fear of food, and eat this, not that. So non-restrictive patterns of eating are how most traditional cultures viewed food as they were evolving before all of this nonsense about weight control and food abundance. So a non-restrictive, non-diet approach, anti-diet approach to weight loss and weight control simply leads to better body image acceptance and good psychological, mental health, emotional fitness, metabolic fitness, rather than an emphasis on weight loss, which leads to none of these things. When are you going to finally get it? When are you going to get with the program? 80% of people who choose to diet for weight loss are women, so the people who are affected most by the North American diet mentality in a negatively impacting, psychologically destructive way are also women. This is why food and fatness are female issues. So stay tuned. We'll be doing more in the Empowered Woman program. If you want to feel better about life, if you want to learn how to deal with food in a healthy way instead of a destructive way, then check out the Empowered Woman experience, and I look forward to seeing you there. and read my book, The Anti-Diet Approach to Weight Loss and Weight Control. I think you'll be able to identify yourself a lot in that book and lead to some conclusions about where your diet mentality has been leading you all along. There's a reason you don't feel good about yourself, and it has nothing to do with your weight. It has everything to do with your failed diet attempts that simply don't work in conjunction with the way the human mind is developed.